You see their live coverage of five-star safety Kamari Wilson is getting ready to make his college decision. A little bit of an interesting angle and placement there for a while if you're a Georgia fan, and obviously most of the folks who are watching on our DawgNation channels are UGA fans. We have some SEC country folks tuning in there as well. You see the A&M, you see the Florida, you see the Florida State, the LSU. For a while, the camera angle, we couldn't quite see that Georgia hat, and you were left to wonder, was there a Georgia hat even on the table for Kamari Wilson? It is well off to the left. I got to tell you, as someone who follows the hat science, the fact that the Kamari Wilson hat somewhere near the Gulf of Mexico there makes me a little bit nervous. But nonetheless, that is the situation there as he gets ready to make his college decision. Of course, hard not to notice in the last little bit, there's been some online chatter that has certainly seemed to erupt here for the Florida Gators on this. Wilson, of course, spent the final weekend of the 2022 cycle at Florida ahead of this college decision day today. There had been some chatter about that. Georgia's obviously been in the mix for Kamari Wilson for quite some time. You see there in his hometown of Fort Pierce, Florida. Of course, Kamari played his high school football this year at IMG Academy, but getting ready to make that big announcement here coming up in just a little bit. Live coverage here on the DawgNation video channels brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau. It's already been quite an interesting day for Georgia on the recruiting front. A lot of the big names that Georgia fans were hoping to secure letters of intent for, who had long time been commitments for the most part, that has been what today has been all about, including just a little bit earlier, Julian Humphrey, who at one point in time was a Florida commit, decommitted from Florida, committed to Georgia, had been very vocal as a supporter of UGA during his Georgia commitment, was recently reoffered by the brand new Florida staff led by new head coach Billy Napier. There'd been a little bit of drama about what Humphrey might do, but he reaffirmed his pledge by signing with Georgia here today. And, of course, five-star cornerbacks like Dalen Everett and Jaheim Singletary, they have gone into the fold there as well. The Jalen Walkers and the Bear Alexanders, they have done that too. There are a couple of Georgia commits that won't, at least today, become signees of this program, and in some cases won't become that at all. Tyree West, defensive line commit, rumored to be maybe on his way out of the Georgia class, was at one point in time thought maybe be going to Florida State. He instead flipped his commitment to Tennessee today and signed with the Vols. There's been some rumors that Marquise Groves-Killebrew, a longtime defensive back commit, might be flipping his commitment and then eventually signing with Texas A&M. We'll continue to follow that. Kamari Wilson, when he makes his announcement coming up in a few minutes' time, one way or another, this is not the only announcement the Georgia fans are still interested in for today. There is also still chatter out there involving Marvin Jones Jr., the elite pass rusher. There's obviously Shamar James, the terrific linebacker. There has been some new chatter emerge related to Deion Smoke Bowie, a one-time Georgia pledge who decommitted, went to Texas A&M, seemingly now back in play for Georgia once again. That's a name worth following here a little bit. But for now, the man of the hour is the five-star safety Kamari Wilson from Fort Pierce, Florida. And you must acknowledge here that there has been some chatter potentially connecting Wilson to a program outside UGA here for the last last couple of hours or so, and that program might indeed be Florida and not Georgia, as Billy Napier tries to make a big splash here coming up in his first signing day as Florida head coach. Of course, Georgia going to fight this one down to the wire, as it's been fighting for Wilson the entire time, so we'll pay close attention to all that, and we'll give you that announcement live here coming up in just a moment on these DawgNation video channels. Jeff Sintel on the scene for us, getting that camera position secure. You see right now the work being done there around the table where Wilson will eventually sit to get everything squared away on that and to get everybody kind of ready to go. So we'll keep our eyes on all of that and get ready to show this for you here in just a little bit. Big thanks to Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau for all of this here today. Let me remind you with our friends at Kroger to make you check out Kroger.com/boost. This is a great new membership model that Kroger has for you, which offers all kinds of terrific incentives, including free grocery delivery, also twice the fuel points, and it can be had for as low as $59 a year. So if you haven't tried Kroger boost yet. This is a great time to experiment with this, to learn more about that. Check out Kroger.com/boost for a lot more on that. It's Kroger.com/boost, and you can be a big part of everything going on at Kroger. Great new membership program coming up with Kroger Boost. Make sure you check that out today. We are still a few minutes away from the big announcement coming from Kamari Wilson, so we'll keep our camera right there on that scene. You can see all the movement as it unfolds, and a lot of times it's just kind of interesting to be able to, to kind of see just the setup that goes on getting ready for one of these announcements. There's obviously a lot of that. The Georgia hat, of course, way to the left here with A&M, Florida, Florida State, LSU. It seems like there's a little bit of a, kind of a weird feng shui thing kind of going on anyway with the way in which the hats all kind of seem to lean to the left side on the table as it is. So I guess you can decide for yourself kind of what that means. While we have some time, we'll jump in here and get some of your comments as well on kind of what you think about the day so far for Georgia, your thoughts on Wilson, and what might still come after this with Marvin Jones Jr. and Shamar James and others who are kind of potentially on their way with all of that. So let's try DawgNation.com here at first, and let's see how folks are doing there on the DawgNation side of things. Yeah, so, I mean, as I said before, the only thing I have to offer by way of hat science is the Georgia hat's in the middle of next week. Like, that's probably not a great sign, but we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I mean, the Georgia hat being what appears to be 6 inches farther away than the next closest hat, a little tricky there on that. So, trying to get in here and offer some of these comments. A little bit of an issue for that right now. Let's see if having a little trouble with the comments there on DawgNation.com. We'll see if we can get those going here in just a little bit. Let me go to Facebook instead. We'll take some comments over there on Facebook. Glad to have you with us as five-star safety Kamari Wilson gets ready to make his announcement here coming up in just a little bit. Tom Skinner thinking it might be Florida. We'll see about that here in just a little bit. Ted Young gives you a go, Dogs. Billy Hurley says the hat science going on. Yeah, I mean, as said before, I think he might need a forklift to reach that Georgia hat right now, so that's a little concerning, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, poor Jeff Glickman, like a lot of the rest of the folks, had to kind of wonder where the Georgia hat even is. Dustin Goodwin also pointing out the gap. I mean, honestly, you could drive a semi-truck in between the A&M hat and the Georgia hat right there. I'm just telling you right now, that does not seem great. Joshua Gibbs says the wall is Jackson State blue. I'm colorblind, so some of that stuff is lost on me. I don't think they probably painted the wall just for today, but Tom Skinner asking the same thing. Like, where it even is the Georgia hat? Yeah, it's way off to the left. If you see, like, my laptop right here, the Georgia hat's kind of like right there next to that. Not close. Not close. Eddie Dabalski, anything more official on the Bowie rumors? I mean, only that they exist and that it's going to still be several more hours before we find out about Deion Bowie. But that has obviously been out there. And this is one of those things that's probably what erupted, for those of you that follow this stuff very closely, probably in the last 24 hours. I don't know that Bowie's was generating a lot of Georgia chatter 72 hours ago, but in the last day or so, there's been more Bowie talk, and it seems like that talk centers around him as an offensive prospect now and maybe not as a defensive prospect. Oh, let's get some more of your comments. Fred Evans checking in. Appreciate that. Chad Williams says that UGA hat's in California. Yeah, it really is. I mean, that UGA hat's a long way away. A long way away. Nate Thomas on the subject of Christopher Smith coming back. I mean, listen, actually, why don't we do this? Let's hear from Kirby Smart on this because obviously, Georgia's added a lot of defensive backs today between Singletary and Dalen Everett and, obviously names like that, five-star safety Malachi Starks. But a guy like Kamari Wilson does remain a need for this program, even if, one of our commenters suggests, what if Christopher Smith were to come back? Listen, no matter what stands to happen with Georgia with its defensive backs, Kirby Smart, when he spoke to the reporters a little earlier this day, was quite emphatic that defensive back remains a tremendous position of need for Georgia. That means both cornerbacks and safeties. Let me let you hear Kirby on that topic from a little earlier today.
I don't know what you would be referring to. I don't know how many are in there. I get confused between what's in and what's not in, but we don't have enough. We're still lower than we've ever been in terms of defensive backs. So I'm not real smart about accounting, but first in, first out, how many in, how many out. We have more leaving than we have coming, and we were already below. So if you have more leaving than you have coming, then you're actually negative net gain. So we're still behind at the defensive back position, and it's a position that's been really, it's been tough for us this year because we have not been able to play dime packages. We've not been able to do some of the things we want to do, and that's 6 DBs on the field. And I am really proud of the DBs in this class that we have, but we're not anywhere near where we used to be. I mean, I think we have 7 that left since the last year. And then you throw in the seniors, those kind of core Georgia guys that have been here forever that are now finishing. When you add that 7 plus 4 or 5, that's a 1-year window of 13 to 14 guys. So in my mind, we're still kind of short numbers of scholarship players.
So that's Kirby Smart making it very clear that Georgia's pursuing a lot of defensive backs because in his mind they need a lot of defensive backs, and one of those would be Kamari Wilson, who's obviously been a factor. Georgia's been a factor in his recruitment for quite some time. Coming up in a few minutes' time, we're going to let you see Kamari Wilson make his college choice live here on the DawgNation video channels. Of course, our friends at SEC Country kind of checking in on this there as well. We're brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau. By the way, big thanks to Georgia Farm Bureau for being a part of this. They've been your insurance provider in our state since 1959, living and working and doing life in communities just like yours and mine across our great state here. So make sure you check them out because obviously dependable transportation is a big part of your life, and part of dependable transportation is reliable auto insurance. It means an insurance provider that keeps its promises to you. That's what Georgia Farm Bureau has been doing in Georgia since 1959 when it comes to auto insurance. Friendly folks who are on the other side of the phone when you've got a claims need or when you want to talk about your policy or anything related to that. That's what Georgia Farm Bureau will do for you. So check them out online. Find out why Georgia Farm Bureau is always the home team. It's gfbinsurance.com. That is gfbinsurance.com. All right, we'll take some YouTube comments here for a little bit, and then we'll get ready to show you live coverage of Kamari Wilson when he gets ready to make his announcement here in just a bit. Space Coast checking in to say, FSU fan hoping and praying Kamari goes to either us or Georgia, so he doesn't want him to go to Florida. McBreezy Penguin checking in, saying how much they love Deion Sanders. And obviously, listen, Deion's made a big impact today. He certainly deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do. Ryan Pohl on the subject of Shamar James. That's another Georgia-Florida battle that we'll be watching later on this evening. Now, one of the things that makes James different is that James was a long-time Florida commit. If Dan Mullen doesn't get fired, you don't have really much reason to believe that James would have ever changed his commitment from Florida to begin with. So the James thing, you're dealing with a player that's been long time connected to Florida who kind of opened himself back up after the coaching change. In the case of Kamari Wilson, this is probably an example of Florida getting more involved, if it indeed is the case, as the online chatter has suggested. This is an example of a player getting more involved with Florida because of the coaching change. So a little bit different in terms of how Kamari Wilson and Shamar James have been impacted by the coaching change there at Florida. The firing of Dan Mullen probably moved James away from Florida, whereas seemingly the hiring of Billy Napier, maybe most specifically Corey Raymond here, has maybe drawn Kamari Wilson a little closer to Florida. But we'll obviously follow that and see what the announcement is coming up in just a moment. Hoop category says prediction on Kamari Wilson. Well, probably a little late for any kind of predicting. We're going to find out for ourselves here coming up in just a moment. Chief Noel 44 on the subject of Billy Napier is obviously trying to make a splash here in his first early signing period as the Florida coach, and you really expect nothing less than that. Obviously, a coach like this has to have something to show for National Signing Day. Florida beginning the day ranked outside the top 70. I believe only a total of 8 public commits. So obviously making some sort of impact was kind of job one for Billy Napier. He's going to try to do that. Let's see what else. Noah Sheldon 500 on the subject of those Alabama wide receivers. Yeah, I mean, if you want to know why Georgia needs defensive backs as badly as it does, is because of those kind of head-to-head battles against a program like Alabama, which has excelled at the wide receiver position. You want guys who can guard those guys. And clearly in the SEC championship, Georgia didn't have enough of them. So getting players like what Georgia's already gotten in Dalen Everett, what Georgia's already gotten in Malachi Starks, what Georgia's already gotten in the person of Jaheim Singletary, those were all the kind of big recruiting wins that Georgia had to have for this class. Smart, in the clip you heard a moment ago, kind of alluded to the way in which a lot of these stories are told over the course of a multitude of cycles, that some of what Georgia's still living with are the guys that left the program after 2020, that you spent a couple of cycles trying to bring capable replacements in for that, and that's exactly what Georgia's trying to do. By the way, new image on your screen now, you see that, a reference to Philippians 4:13, a nice Bible verse from Kamari Wilson. Also, now to go along with the 5 hats on the table, you see images of Wilson from his recruiting visits wearing the various uniforms, the traditional white top, gold pants there for LSU, the all-white look for Texas A&M, a little bit of a Florida State right there in the middle, the Florida Gators there just off to will be stage left, stage right, on your screen there when it comes to the Florida Gators. Then the Georgia Bulldogs jersey on the far right as we're looking at that, and a little bit more of a non-traditional look. I believe, is that the all-black or is that the black jersey, red pants? I can't quite tell based on how the graphic looks, if that's a black pair of pants or a red pair of pants that Kamari's wearing there for Georgia, but clearly kind of a non-traditional look there with the alternate uniform for UGA. So a nice backdrop for Kamari as he gets ready to make his announcement. Also, it looks like at the bottom left corner of that graphic that he'll be behind him some well wishes and some loved words by his family there. So a very cool thing as they celebrate the big day for him. And also the cowboy hat there for the Texas A&M image. I kind of missed that a moment ago. Looking like a member of the Dutton Ranch there with the cowboy hat on. Good stuff there from Kamari Wilson. B.A.'s Cardigan asked about where Georgia sits right now in recruiting. Obviously, the final number is still being tabulated as far as the rank for Georgia. But the one thing you can't say if you're a UGA fan, no matter how this class ends up in terms of what you still add to it, it is already an elite class that's been put together here with what Georgia's already brought in. But you know how it goes in the late stages of a recruiting cycle, whether it be Shamar James or Kamari Wilson right now or anything else that's still on the way. Georgia wants to add to that. Georgia fans want to see that added to. So Georgia's at no worse than a top 3 class today, no matter what happens, but obviously trying to make that push for even greater heights based on kind of how this goes here in a little bit. We are probably a little less than 15 minutes away from Wilson making his announcement. And Michael, what we'll do in a few minutes, no need to do this right now, but what we'll do in a few minutes is kind of check in on the audio there on that and let folks hear a little bit of that sound there. As said before, no need to do that right now. We don't want to peer too much into those private conversations, but we'll tune into the audio in a little bit. That way we don't miss it once it starts. Brady Carver says, DawgNation doesn't normally send video coverage for misses. I know that's kind of the common theory that we wouldn't be there unless we knew Kamari Wilson was going to Georgia. Trust me, as of right now, I don't know that. Now, I'm not. You see Jeff Sentell on your screen. Who knows what Jeff knows there in Fort Pierce, Florida? But I certainly cannot tell you right now that Kamari Wilson is going to Georgia. And we have covered guys that have not gone to UGA. So this decision was not made to cover this live because we knew that Kamari Wilson was going to Georgia. This decision to cover this live was based on the fact this was an announcement of note for Georgia here today. And obviously, it's just sort of good theater to find out what he indeed does. But this is not a fix. And I've tried to tell you all that before. We've swung and missed on some of these before. So if we only go to ones that Georgia's going to get, then we're not very good at what we do because we've been live for a few of these that Georgia hasn't gotten, and there's a very good chance that this may be another one of those here in just a little bit. Reformation Logistics says, can a recruit flip between now and February? It depends on if that announcement is also followed by the letter of intent. We've seen some examples before, like Trey Sanders comes to mind on this, where I think a lot of Georgia fans felt like Georgia was in good shape there in that recruitment. And then when Sanders made his announcement, he announced for Alabama. That was a big surprise. And then remember how we waited almost, 12 hours for the letter of intent to finally get signed, and we never really knew if that was like chicanery or what. So, the announcement itself is not the binding agreement. The letter of intent is the binding agreement. And in some cases, recruits send their letter of intent, but then have their public ceremony to kind of go through the motions of signing when they've actually already done that. In the case of someone like Wilson, a high-profile announcement like this, a lot of times the opposite is true, where what Wilson will do on video in a moment is a commitment announcement, the letter of intent to be signed after that. And we have seen things happen where letters of intent get, air quotes here, lost in the mail or something along those lines. So I guess anything in recruiting is possible, but no reason to believe that what Wilson does in a moment won't be his final decision, as they're going through some mic checks and some things like that and kind of getting ready to go here in a little bit. Let me see if I can check back in on DawgNation. I had a little issue getting the comments on DawgNation a moment ago. They're better. They're up now. All right, let's try this again over at DawgNation.com. Let me just refresh the page and see if I can get. Now we're seeing some comments over here on DawgNation.com. Some of your comments there. Of course, we're all brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau here, getting ready for the big announcement for five-star safety Kamari Wilson. Some Georgia fans still feeling pretty good about this. Other Georgia fans kind of feeling like the writing may be on the wall. Whipping post. A little bit of an Allman Brothers homage, also pointing out what I think is pretty true. That Georgia hat's a long way away right now, folks. A long way away. Also pointing out that the Florida State jersey is the one that he's wearing in the center of the graphic. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily means anything or not. I'd be pretty surprised if it's Florida State here on this. But listen, I've also been really surprised before. Allison Scatling, the subject of Jeff Sintel. Yeah, we saw Jeff in the field of vision of the camera a little earlier. So Jeff there in Fort Pierce, Florida, and whatever Kamari Wilson announces in a moment will hopefully get Jeff on the phone and allow that to be a preview of what's coming the rest of the day for Georgia, with Marvin Jones Jr. still out there, with Shamar James still out there, Deion Smoke Bowie still out there. We'll let Jeff kind of preview some of that for us here in a little bit. J-Dog on the subject of Jackson State. It's one of those things where there had been some internet chatter related to Jackson State a little earlier today, but honestly, I never really saw any true source material for that. It's one of those things that I think was just kind of one of those rumors that had really no connection to fact whatsoever. Now, I guess on a day like this, anything is possible, but the early talk that I heard regarding Jackson State seemed to be just the sort of typical social media innuendo that was not really connected to anything. The more substantial rumors, if you're a Georgia fan to be concerned about, is what's popped up here as of late related to Florida. That, at least right before we came on video, that seemed to be the thing that was the bigger concern there. And I have now been moved out of the bottom corner of the screen so you can get a better look at the Georgia hat, which is, listen, if the other four hats are oceanfront property, I'm somewhere on Montpelier Drive right now or something like that. I mean, I'm a good ways away from the Georgia hats, kind of a good ways away for the rest of them. A little concerning here right now. More of your comments there, DawgNation.com. Of course, brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau, getting ready for a big one. We'll be back here live one way or another, no matter how this works out. We'll be back live around 6 p.m. tonight for more recap of all the big day for recruiting. So hopefully there'll be some more good news to talk about. It's already been a great day for UGA, and obviously the hopes are it gets even better. We'll be on live to cover that for you a little bit later on. Rafa Rich ready to see Wilson make his announcement. Yeah, that's expected to come in about 10 minutes or so, a little less than 10 minutes probably. Yard Dog also bringing up a pretty good point. That in the case of Kamari Wilson, one of the things that I think has made some Georgia fans feel very good about this for quite some time is the fact that Georgia has a history of doing very well with recruits from IMG Academy. This is the kind of thing that Georgia has fared very well with, but in this particular case, that may or may not count here in this one, but obviously over the course of time, Georgia's done very well with IMG Academy-type recruits. Old Soul and Spirit on the subject of Travis Hunter doing a hat toss today. Yeah, he threw them all, right? He threw Georgia. He threw Florida State. I think he even threw Auburn, which I thought was even kind of funny. That was even on the dais, if you will, for Travis Hunter. But yeah, a lot of hat tosses for the nation's number one prospect a little earlier. We'll see if Kamari Wilson has anything like that in store for this coming up here in a little bit. Rafa Rich was also not happy about Hunter throwing the hats. Yeah, that's one of those things where I have to try not to be a hypocrite, because obviously when Quay Walker's throwing hats, I love that. And if Travis Hunter's throwing hats, I don't like that quite as much, but a lot of that has to do with the school that I cheer for. So from that standpoint, I'm going to try to be a little bit fair there and say, listen, generally speaking, I'm kind of okay with signing day theatrics, with recruiting drama. Sometimes that goes in favor of my favorite team, and sometimes that goes against them. You just sort of have to be okay with whatever. At least I choose to be. Michael, why don't we do this? Let's bring up the volume just a little bit here, because I don't want to miss any kind of announcements made in the building. We don't have to make it real loud. I don't want to, like I said, peer in on too many private conversations. But let's bring some of that up here a little bit, and we'll see if we can hear that. And if it's up, I'm not hearing it. So we'll see. Now I'm hearing some of that. So we'll bring it a little bit low. Like I said, no need to put anybody's business out there, but I do want to hear it once announcements begin. Brian Whitehead said I can do with one hat, but he went overboard with the hat tosses. Yeah, a little bit too much. When you're kind of spraying the infield with a bunch of hat tosses, that ends up feeling like kind of a lot. I kind of agree with Brian there on that. Yard Dog on the subject of replacing Lewis Singh. That's one of the reasons why the Kamari Wilson story here is such a big deal. Now you've also got Malachi Starks coming in. Ja'Cory Thomas is a player that a lot of folks feel very good about in kind of a similar role. But Georgia also wants Kamari Wilson there as well, as Wilson's kind of doing some photo stuff here and some selfies and some things like that. Jimmy Barnes also a little concerned about how far away the Georgia hat is. Yeah, that thing is the middle of next week. That's why they should have been. Tim Fales also on the subject of Deion Sanders. Yeah, I know that's been kind of the rumor. I don't know how real any of that is right now, but it's fair to point out that I guess Steve Wiltfong, who covers all this for 24/7 Sports, he had mentioned other big-name recruits being potentially in the mix for Deion and Jackson State, and that's kind of left everybody wondering about all the uncommitted guys about, well, who might that be, which obviously kind of gets Kamari Wilson into that discussion there too. But I would say the more substantial chatter is probably related to Florida more so than kind of an off-the-board choice. Donnie Brooks does reminding us of the, sometimes the clothes around the player can be a little clue here. Says, I see a red shirt. I'm a little bit colorblind. Is that the, yeah. So the gentleman wearing the hat, that's a red shirt there. That could just be an undershirt. Or maybe there's going to be a reveal coming later on with that. Fair to point out. I see like designer labels on the other clothes. I see a Michael Kors. I see a Ralph Lauren. A lot of fancy designer labels here. I don't really see much in the way of any kind of tip off from what we're seeing there. I also, sometimes we've seen the family members all wearing the kind of pullover or the windbreaker type jackets. In this particular case, I don't see that right now either. So I don't know that the family gear provides much of a clue about anything, but we're about 5 minutes away from finding out. There is a lot of gold chains out there. That is some sharp. Am I allowed to say bling? Can I say that? That is some sharp looking bling, to be sure. Ronnie Nelson feels like that is a red shirt that the gentleman is wearing there. So and by red shirt he means Georgia shirt. So we'll see. Also, now this is an important part of hat science. Russ Calhoun brings this up, that if we assume that Kamari Wilson is right-handed and 90% of the population is, if we assume that Wilson is not right-handed, then the Georgia hat at the far right is not a bad sign, which I kind of agree with Russ on, but we had to widen our camera angle just to get the Georgia hat in the picture. So I kind of agree with Russ on this, that sometimes being on the right side for a right-handed guy is a good thing. But in this particular case, we had to change our aspect ratio just to get the Georgia hat even in the frame. So there is that. Robin Boyd said he's going to go to Vanderbilt. There you go. Jamie Huff says that the bling is reminiscent of Coach Prime. Obviously, Deion Sanders on everyone's mind today, given what he pulled off with Travis Hunter a little earlier. You see, boy, this is a business decision when the manila folders have been brought out. That's a manila folder right there, folks. That is a business thing right there. And we're getting closer to time. Let's go ahead and bring that audio back up a little bit now, if you don't mind, Michael, because we're getting closer to doing this. Live coverage here on the DawgNation video channels, SEC Country as well. 5-star safety Kamari Wilson getting ready to choose from LSU, Florida State, Florida, Texas A&M, and Georgia. Family and friends gather around him in his hometown of Fort Pierce, Florida. Obviously a big get, and for the Georgia fans tuned in here around hoping to see that be UGA, and we will find out here in a little bit. Skip Grantham says we need an elite secondary, and that's why so much attention's been paid to Jaheim Singletary and Dalen Everett earlier today, to Malachi Starks, obviously longtime Georgia commit, and now trying to add a Kamari Wilson here late in the process. You hear Wilson a moment ago saying that it's 4 o'clock. That was the time we were told he'd be getting ready to make his announcement. That must mean that we are getting close to being able to see this. Manila folders in hand, as I said before, he's ready to make that business decision here. You're talking about, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, number 28 prospect in the country, number 2 safety, the number 5 player in the talent-rich state of Florida. This a very big deal as Wilson gets ready to make his announcement. We'll provide live coverage here brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau in just a moment. Once he starts talking, I will shut up. Believe it or not, I can shut up. I will do that in a moment. And we'll let you see this as it happens. Calm before the storm there as family gathers around him, probably about a minute or so away from getting ready to make this announcement. Some Georgia fans feel confident. Other Georgia fans a little concerned. Some chatter had maybe Wilson maybe inching away from Georgia here in the last couple of hours. We'll find out if that's the case. John Daly predicts him to go to Bishop Sycamore. I don't know about that, but very funny nonetheless. Shabazz Ali says, I'll take Jackson State, just no Florida here on that. So Shabazz weighing in on that. Dan Brookshire checking in there on that too. A lot of folks having some fun here on this. Noah Sheldon does there as well. So a lot of folks getting ready to make their big announcement or see the big announcement from Kamari Wilson. We appreciate you being with us here on DawgNation.com, the DawgNation Facebook and YouTube pages, of course, all the other platforms there as well. Some folks kind of checking in on this on the SEC country side of things there as well. Appreciate you doing that too. Ray B checks in to say that Malachi Starks is our safety, so it won't be end of the world if he doesn't come to Georgia. I mean, that's obviously kind of the truth for Georgia right now. It is recruiting from a position of strength in that it's already added 1 5-star safety already today. So it's simply a matter of, can Georgia add another 5-star safety? It's certainly true that.
Speech before I announce.
Let's let you hear from Kamari Wilson right now.
I want to thank God. I want to thank all the coaches that took the time to recruit me, and my family, my mom, dad, my trainer, Roscoe Barber. And I also want to say something to the kids. I want to say that I want them to keep working hard as possible, keep God first, and keep academics first, and they can do anything possible through Christ. And I want to give a shout out to Fort Pierce Firehawks. They just won a championship, and the boy, I just want to say y'all boys keep going and keep doing y'all thing. One day this could be y'all. And I'll be going to the University of Florida.
So that's about enough of that. We'll pull out of that. That's about enough of that. But Kamari Wilson does choose Florida right there. Actually, let's go back up. Let's see what he says here as far as why his reasoning is for choosing Florida. Not a surprise based on chatter of the last hour. Let's hear a little bit more from Kamari Wilson on his reasoning.
I mean, Coach Billy, he's definitely turning that program around, and I have faith in him that he's gonna turn Florida to a big program, and I got trust in his process and his plan for me, and I will be furthering my education there.
Let's hear what else he has to say. If you're just joining us, 5-star safety Kamari Wilson, not a surprise based on the last couple of hours worth of chatter, has chosen the University of Florida.
He's that guy. He trained great players like Jamal Adams, Derek Stingley, and I can go on. And I want to be next. I want to be the best, top dog. Yes, sir. Go Gators.
All right, so there you go. That's 5-star safety Kamari Wilson making his choice of the Florida Gators. As said before, the entirety of the online chatter over the course of the last couple of hours had essentially spoiled that announcement from Wilson. It was largely suspected that's what he was going to choose. We knew that before we came on the air today. And obviously, Florida has gotten something to show now for a 2022 class that saw the Gators begin the day outside the top 70 in recruiting, a program desperate for any good news it could get on the recruiting trail, gets at least some good news right there as five-star safety Kamari Wilson makes his announcement. We're going to try to do here is we're going to try to catch up with Jeff Sintel and kind of find out exactly how it is that Georgia, which had been obviously down the road with Kamari Wilson for quite some time, how it kind of slipped away from Georgia here over the course of the last weekend. Kamari spending that time in Gainesville visiting with Florida. He was very active on social media talking about that. We'll kind of find out what was instrumental there with Kamari on that. We'll try to catch up with Jeff Sintel here in just a moment. We'll also turn our attention now to about 35 minutes from now. That's when Marvin Jones Jr. is getting ready to make his announcement here coming up. The big-time edge rusher, that's a name of note for Georgia. We'll watch on that. Then, of course, other names to follow throughout the rest of the day. Still waiting to find more out later on this evening about linebacker Shamar James. And, of course, Deion Smoke Bowie has been a name that's been discussed there. Georgia will wait beyond this early signing period for names such as Ernest Green, the four-star offensive lineman, that seems as of late to maybe be trending in the direction of UGA, maybe a UGA versus Bama head-to-head win if Georgia could hold on there. And, of course, Christian Miller, defensive lineman, who probably a Georgia-Ohio State head-to-head battle there. That is also one that Georgia will wait beyond National Signing Day to get a chance to hear from. So we'll take a few comments. We'll give Jeff a little bit of time. Michael, if you want to try to see if Jeff's available for us to pop on and talk to on the phone there, if you want to try to do that, I'll take some comments, and we'll see if we can hear from Jeff here on this in just a bit. Nature Gator, happy that the Florida Gators got two outstanding safeties today. So obviously that's a Florida fan feeling pretty good about what he's seen there today. Ryan Pohl says he still likes Marvin Jones, Ernest Green, and Christian Miller on their way to Georgia. So obviously Georgia still has a chance to win with a lot of big-time commits. Michael, can you hear me? Let's go ahead and try to get see if we can get Jeff on the phone if we can. Let's see what else is going on. Let me pop over to Facebook for a moment. We'll find out what folks are saying over there. Obviously, disappointing news that Wilson's made his choice to go somewhere else. Richard Pollard on the subject of the quick exodus for some Georgia fans once they did get the news they were looking for. And, yeah, sometimes that's the way that it goes. Paul and Amanda Goodman asking about Elias Ricks, obviously the transfer from LSU. Given what Georgia's brought in at the cornerback spot today with Julian Humphrey and with Dalen Everett and with who am I leaving out? Oh, yeah, Jaheim Singletary. Given what Georgia's done there at the cornerback spot today, at this point in time, I don't really know there's even much room necessarily for Elias Ricks at Georgia, which is not to say that Ricks is not a great player, but you've never really been of the belief that obviously, Ricks has friends on the Georgia roster, but I've never really been of the belief that the Ricks thing was much deeper than that right now. And that kind of seems to be the case. But Georgia obviously adds a bunch of big-time cornerbacks today. Joseph Kennedy got some hate for the Gators, and obviously this will kind of spice up that Georgia-Florida rivalry again. Frankly, I'm actually glad to see that Florida's still participating in tackle football. For a while I was kind of concerned that maybe they were just going to kind of pack it up. So it's kind of nice to see them participating again. So there you go. I guess they're going to try to throw their hat in the ring back in this rivalry once again. Maurice Long wishes he would have chosen another school besides Florida. So, yeah, that's kind of that on that. Mike Little on the subject of Arik Gilbert. That's obviously one of those big offseason conversations that we'll get into as far as where that goes. Clearly, Georgia's still hoping to get him back there at a certain point. John William Adams says that's going to hurt you mathematically for that number one spot in recruiting. That's definitely true. Michael Collum wishes him well. Yeah, that's like the one thing that I think we can all universally agree on. At least for me, it's a very easy thing to say. Like, I love going back and forth with Florida fans, but the one thing you should know is, and I think that you can all attest to this, like, I mock like the coach all the time, right? If you're making millions of dollars, to me, you're fair game for me to mock. Florida fans, we go back and forth for the most part. That's all good-natured. But you've never heard me say a bad word about a Florida player. You've never heard me say that. So if this is where Kamari Wilson feels like the best place for him to play football is, I'll never say a bad word about him at all. Now, I'll mock the fans. I'll mock the coaches. I'll do that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to say a bad word about the players the same way I don't trash the Georgia players either. So if this is Wilson's decision, then truly, I truly respect his decision if that's what he wants to do. But I do think it's been kind of funny, and I said this on DawgNation Daily today. A lot of Florida fans have been reaching out to me of like, BA, how you like us now? We're recruiting. And my response to that is, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, what do you mean? Like, you want a gold star because you're recruiting? That's what you should have been doing all along. Like, Florida is a flagship university in one of the most talent-rich states in the country. This is what you should be doing. You should be a factor for elite prospects. And so this is essentially Billy Napier working his way back up to, kind of the flat ground, working his way back up to a zero that Dan Mullen would have had the program at before he got fired. So, I guess congratulations that you're recruiting now. And it's a shame that Georgia won't get this 5-star safety to go along with the other 5-star safety that it's already gotten here in this class. But as I said before, not a bad word for me to say about Kamari Wilson. He obviously got a good pitch from Florida there late at the end this past weekend. That's where he's going to go. And Florida fans feel like they finally got a recruiter there at the head coaching spot. And obviously, I guess you can't go an entire cycle without getting at least one recruit. And that is what Florida's been able to do here. Skip Grantham already looking ahead to those battles coming up in Jacksonville. Yeah, I mean, like the one thing that we know is true is the Georgia-Florida rivalry is not going out of style anytime soon. And, given what Florida should be, given what Georgia is, there's really no reason why the Georgia-Florida couldn't be the premier rivalry in all of college football. So maybe Florida will do its part to make that the case. Let's see what else. So I'm assuming we have not heard from Jeff there yet. We've tried him and not been able to reach him. Is that right? Okay. We'll see if we can try him again there in just a little bit. Also, we're coming up about 30 minutes away from Marvin Jones Jr. If we can't track down Jeff, then we'll probably get off the air here because if Georgia had gotten Kamari Wilson, I could have probably filled all the way until the Marvin Jones Jr., but I can't fill for 30 minutes on the heels of bad news. Not as easy to do. All right, let's see what else is going on over here on YouTube. Shabazz said that Jeff ran into the bus. Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he had to catch the bus. Raphael Wright, I think, has got the right perspective. Whether, this edition joined up or not, Georgia's still getting some awesome guys. I think that's very much true. Blackbeard's Ghost said he was probably attracted by that Gasparilla Bowl swag bag. That is very funny. Ryan Pohl predicting that Georgia gets Jones Jr. and loses Shamar James. That may be very well the case. It's also kind of hard to call losing Shamar James really a loss, given the fact that he was committed to Florida to begin with. Let's see what else. Scully Reddy kind of going back to the Kyrie Elam recruitment that Florida won, but ultimately didn't probably make too big of an impact in the rivalry, and that's fair to point out. Anti-Snowbird says that he mocks Georgia fans, saying we didn't want him, he doesn't fit our style of play. I don't think you're seeing any Georgia fans saying that. Certainly not seeing me say that. Here's the one thing that I don't have to do. Like, I don't have to lie about it. Like, obviously I'm a Georgia fan, and thankfully things are going well enough for Georgia. They don't have to lie about anything. Of course Georgia wanted Kamari Wilson. Of course that's true. We wouldn't be covering it live if Georgia didn't want Kamari Wilson. Of course that's the case. I think what some Florida fans want is someone like me to get under the desk and cry under the table because Georgia didn't get him. Honestly, that's not the case either. It can be true that Georgia wanted him. Clearly it did. It can also be true that Georgia's kind of on to the next thing now. And honestly, Georgia has already signed, not committed, but signed so many 5-stars today that it would take me kind of a while to even think of them all. I almost forgot one a moment ago when I was talking about those defensive backs. So there are a lot of things that can be true at once. On the one hand, this was another 5-star that Georgia wanted. On the other hand, Georgia's got a lot of 5-stars, and there are potentially more to come. UGA Football Highlight Film says, when does Marvin Jones Jr. sign? I believe that's coming up in about 25 minutes. We're going to be back on video tonight at 6 p.m. to try to give you, or around 6 p.m. anyway, to try to give you a little bit of an overview about how all of that's played out. This one, obviously not good news. Going the wrong direction here for you. Drill checking in to live in the past. Congratulations on your past success. That was the guy you just saw on TV, Kamari Wilson, was, 5 years old the last time Florida won anything of note. So congrats on that. Let's see what else. Back on Facebook here for a moment. Michael Collum also on the subject of Keon Sabb. Yeah, so Sabb, the former Clemson commit, did come out with a top 4 today. Georgia was involved in that top 4. A lot of that seems like very too little too late. Like the Dalen Everett thing came out of nowhere too, which I guess is to a certain extent true. The Sabb thing, I don't know how much I buy. And by the way, it's good to see Michael. I feel like Michael Collum is a guy we haven't seen in the comment section a ton lately. Michael, it's good to see you here today. Yeah, so Sabb, I guess, is out there, but I don't quite know how much I kind of buy into that. Oh, Joel Moody says Keon Sabb already chose Michigan, so there you go. And that's kind of where he was expected to choose, I believe. Yeah, so Keon Sabb has chosen Michigan. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. Billy Mathis said the same thing. Appreciate that. Ronnie, Peter Jeffrey Wilson, saying that Georgia has been successful recruiting defensive backs. Yeah, there's no doubt that's been a success story for Georgia. And even with that success, you still don't quite get everybody you want, and that's certainly the case here too. Randy Hall said, would Jeff have made the trip if you knew that Kamari was going to choose Florida? Here's the thing, though. Like, so much of this stuff has to be kind of planned in advance. You know, it's like, especially long travel like this. So you kind of go into a day like this knowing that a lot of these battles were kind of 50-50 battles. And, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit of a carnival barker by nature. It obviously makes for a better video to have the guy choose Georgia. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But ultimately, our job is to kind of just sort of present the news, whatever it is. So you kind of have to be wherever the news is made. And so that's just kind of what that is. All right, let's see what else. DawgNation.com. Then we'll try Jeff again. We'll see if we can get him. And if not, we may have to move on. So the quarterback comments have started again, which may be my clue. It's time to get off the air. So let's do this. Let's check in with Jeff's intel after 6 p.m. We'll do that. And we'll figure out kind of where some of this kind of stuff goes. We'll watch Marvin Jones Jr. We'll follow, we'll see if Shamar James also goes back to Florida here. We will find out if anything happens with Smoke Bowie, and we'll come back live later on. All of it brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau. Georgia has a big day today, but you can't win them all. Georgia does not win here for Kamari Wilson. He chooses Florida a moment ago. You wish him well. You roll up your sleeves. You get ready to battle Florida again here in the very near future, and you'll keep your eye on elite pass rusher just a few minutes from right now. So stay close to Dog Nation. More on that coming up. This was our Kroger recruiting special here, brought to you by Kroger and Georgia Farm Bureau. We will be back in just a little bit, and we'll hope to hear from Jeff's intel at that time. Talk to you in a few minutes, everybody.